Let's settle this once and for all.
D'Angelico.
Settled. Welcome back, folks. I really enjoyed making the last video about my Garrison G40 acoustic guitar. Thought I might want to make one about my D'Angelico XL SS semi-hollow body electric guitar. Today I'll share a little bit about my journey that brought this guitar and I together. We'll go over a bit of a history on D'Angelico guitar brand, as well as the this particular model. Also share some of the specs on this guitar, and we'll of course let you hear it. Back in the spring of 2024, I was in search of a new electric guitar because I wanted to jumpstart my passion for playing music again. I thought a new instrument would provide some inspiration. I'm definitely an acoustic guitar guy, and over the years I've pared back my guitar collection to a single instrument, which was that Garrison G40 acoustic guitar that I made the previous video about. I've owned a couple electric guitars in the past, however, they've really never been my sort of thing. My very first electric was an Area Pro 2 Candy Apple Red STG Strat style electric guitar that I bought from a pawn shop in the 1990s. And I can't really speak much to the overall quality of Areas, but that one sucked. The frets were totally uneven, constantly buzzing. The ands were so sharp I was wearing band-aids from all the nicks and scrapes. And all I owned at the time was a 15 watt crate practice amp, which didn't do the tone any wonders. Then again, I had a friend who was much better at guitar than I was, and he could make that thing sing. Every time he channeled his inner Van Halen or Megadeth, it put my guitar playing to shame. So, maybe tone really is in the fingers.
Okay, now, dig in.
So as I said, I've always been more of an acoustic guy. So after years spent living in the closet, I eventually sold that Area to a pretty excited kid on Kijiji, and I hope it's still rocking out to this very day. After the Area, I picked up an Oscar Schmidt double cut semi hollow body electric guitar with dual humbuckers. Can't remember what model it was, but it said made by Washburn on the headstock, which, since I owned a Washburn acoustic at the time, seemed pretty cool. I like that guitar much better than my Area, and I guess I found myself more of a humbucker kind of guy, even though it still didn't sound too awesome through that crate amp. My band, the one that was famous in Japan, we were doing some pretty experimental stuff at the time, so most of that Oscar Schmidt was played through a Zoom digital multi-effects pedal into a very basic home recording studio that we had set up. Come to think of it, those demos might still be up on SoundCloud, so leave a comment if you want to hear them. But after a while, history repeated itself, and I found myself drawn back to the acoustic side of things. I don't really love keeping things around that aren't being used, and I wanted to fund the purchase of a new guitar, so I sold that Oscar Schmidt, the crate amp, along with my Washburn acoustic guitar to help fund the Garrison G40. Fast forward to the spring of 2024, and my search for a new electric began. Now, I didn't want to blow the bank, and I wanted to stay away from brands like Fender and Gibson, not because they're bad, they're actually pretty awesome. It's just I was looking for something a bit more unique. I was also looking to replace that Oscar Schmidt, so I wanted another, semi-hollow, hopefully with a double cutaway and some humbucker pickups. I'm a fairly tall guy too, standing 6'5" with long monkey arms, so a bigger body style is definitely going to fit my frame a bit better. And I was hoping for something again with some double cutaways because I spent most of my life as a rhythm guitar player up to that point, and actually still up to this point. And practicing lead was something that I was looking to get into. So with that in mind, I started looking at the Starcaster by Gould, the Viking by Hagstrom, the Streamliner by Gretsch, and even a couple Ibanez models. The search for the perfect electric guitar for me soon led to D'Angelico. I didn't want to fork out 3,000 Canadian plus tax for a deluxe SS, but after listening to that a lot on YouTube and doing a lot of research on it, that was going to be my dream guitar. I resigned myself to maybe one day I'll get one, and started looking at the DC Tour models instead. After all, I still was going to have to buy an amp and need a few more tattoos if I really want to be an electric guitar player, and that could add up. After a couple months of shopping online new, I decided to expand into the world of used guitars. So I checked my local shops and local online marketplaces, however, came up empty. I then went to Reverb, and maybe you'd be shocked to find out, but people were asking an arm and a leg for well-used gear on there. So I couldn't find what I was looking for there either. I was then shopping on Sweetwater, and I saw the little used icon up at the top and decided to check out their gear exchange. Not sponsored by Sweetwater, by the way. As a Canadian customer, shopping on Sweetwater could be a little inconvenient depending on where you live. I'm about an hour from the border, where I have a local border store where I can ship to and pick up. But of course, the government here collects tax even on used gear bought in the States. So anyway, after setting up some filters on the gear exchange and spending several hours scrolling and scrolling and scrolling some more, I came across this beauty. This is a used 2016 D'Angelico XL SS. It's got two humbuckers. It's a single cut, semi-hollow. But you know what? I could live with that. This thing's made in South Korea. And when I laid my eyes upon it and when I saw the price they were asking, a shiver went up my spine. I loved everything about this guitar from the pictures. It's a fully blacked out finish. It's charcoal burst, triple, quadruple, quintuple ply binding in various areas, Grover tuners. We'll get into all those specs later, but this thing's a beaut. Even the headstock spoke to me, even though some might find it a bit much. The body, completely flawless, not even a scratch on the pickguard. I think somebody maybe played this thing for 5 minutes and then it spent 9 years living in a guitar case. Again, I especially love the price tag, and I got this thing for $749 US used, free shipping to the border, and then the tax man came collecting, of course. But even with exchange and taxes, this thing still came in well under half the price of a new one, which was pretty mint. So it shipped to me all the way from Jeff's Music Gear in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Picked it up at the border store, brought it home, reluctantly kept it in the case for a couple days to let it acclimate because it was still pretty cold here in the early spring. And there's probably some sort of climate differences between Indiana and where I live in northwestern Ontario, Canada. So when we finally plugged this thing in, there were only a couple minor issues. There's a bit of fret buzz, and the intonation was a bit off. So I brought it to a local shop here for a full professional setup. They adjusted the neck, set the intonation, put on some new strings, and one huge modification. I changed out the pickup switch from ivory to black. It was like a 20-cent knob. Aside from that, it was impeccable. I'm guessing you're wondering how this thing sounds. So if you want, skip this next part, go right to the demo section. Otherwise, stick around and we'll learn a little bit more about D'Angelico's rich history, and we'll go over some of the specs on this bad boy. Our story begins in 1905 in New York City, where John D'Angelico was born. At the tender age of 9, he apprenticed under his grand uncle, a master luthier specializing in violins and mandolins. This early immersion in instrument making laid the foundation for John's future masterpieces. In 1932, John established his own workshop at 40 Kenmare Street in Manhattan's Little Italy. Here he began crafting archtop guitars that would set new standards in the industry. Despite the Great Depression, D'Angelico's instruments were celebrated for their tonal excellence and became the go-to choice for many jazz musicians. The first D'Angelicos had no pickups, but were built sturdy and loud enough to be heard in the context of a jazz big band. After years of unreliable bookkeeping and documentation of his early models, D'Angelico introduced the Excel model, a smaller, more streamlined iteration of its predecessors. For a time, the Excel was their flagship model. During the late 1930s, at the peak of production, D'Angelico operated with a small team, producing around 35 instruments annually, each meticulously handcrafted. John's dedication to quality over quantity ensured that each guitar was a work of art, resonating with the unique D'Angelico sound that musicians cherished. After John's passing in 1964, the brand's prominence waned. However, the legacy of his instruments endured, becoming highly sought after by collectors and musicians alike. In 1999, the D'Angelico brand was revitalized by a group of enthusiasts dedicated to preserving its storied history, and perhaps cashing in on some of the nostalgia. By 2011, D'Angelico guitars were showcased in an exhibition called Guitar Heroes, Legendary Craftsmen from Italy to New York, at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, highlighting their cultural significance. Check the description box below for a link to a fantastic PDF showcasing many early craftsmen, including Mr. D'Angelico. Today, D'Angelico manufactures its guitars in South Korea, Indonesia, China, and of course, New York City. They offer a diverse range of instruments from reissues of classic designs to modern innovations, catering to musicians across genres. They also offer 3 lines called Premier, Excel, and Deluxe, offering amazing instrument quality at a range of price points. Quite a number of popular artists have played D'Angelicos over the years, including country music legend Chet Atkins, the iconic Eric Clapton, Grateful Dead founding member Bob Weir, and Linkin Park's very own Chester Bennington, to name a few. If that isn't a mixing pot of artists and genres, I don't know what is. Now let's take a look at my Excel SS's specs. According to the information printed on the back of the headstock and within the body of my guitar, this is a 2016 D'Angelico XL SS in charcoal burst made in South Korea. It's a single cutaway, laminated semi-hollow body with flamed maple top, back, and sides. This guitar has a 3-piece maple walnut maple set neck with a C profile. The fretboard is rosewood with mother of pearl inlays, a 16-inch radius, and 20 medium jumbo frets. The scale length is 25 inches and it has a dual action truss rod. The nut material is tusk. It has dual vintage humbuckers made by Kent Armstrong that are controlled by a 3-way switch and 2-tone and 2-volume knobs. There are no coil taps or splits, which I might consider upgrading in the future. The bridge type is a fixed tunematic and it has a stair-step trapeze-style tailpiece, which is where the SS comes from in the model name. Finally, the headstock has Imperial-style Grover tuners, and this thing is covered from tail to tip in some pretty epic multiply binding. Again, I love everything about this instrument, but if I had to pick out 3 main highlights, they would be the flame maple top with all the blackout finishings, the neck feel, which is smooth like butter, and the humbucker tones that even I, a pretty mediocre guitar player, can pull out of this thing. Before we move on to the sound demos, let's take a look at this headstock. Yeah, soak it in, baby. I'm not usually into flashy stuff and I like to keep things basic, but I'll admit, I love it as the size and shape add some balance to the larger body style, and it complements the overall fancy Art Deco finishings. The only real complaints I have about the guitar are that it's a bit heavy and has some pretty significant neck dive using a basic nylon strap. It also has some mild tuning stability issues with my Elixir strings, especially on the G. To fix the neck dive, I swapped to a leather strap with a bit more padding and shoulder friction. I also lubricated the nut with some pencil lead and swapped to a set of strings with a wound G string to help with the tuning stability. I may need to sand the nut slot a bit in the future, but we'll see how it goes. Alright, let's hear how this thing sounds. I just swapped to a new set of the D'Addario XL nickel wound strings with the wound third mentioned earlier, and I'm running directly into Reaper's DAW through my solid state logic SSL2 MK2 interface. For effects, I'm using the free IK Multimedia Amplitude 5 plugin that came with my interface, using various amp and pedal combinations. I'll overlay my signal chain for each sample track so you can see what's going on. I didn't want to overly process things as I'm new to Reaper, and this was my first experience recording an electric guitar in roughly 15 years. Hopefully things sound reasonable on your end, and I might suggest throwing on some headphones to experience any of the modulation effects. Enough talk, let's do this. that's all I really have to say about my Excel SS. I'm sure you're going to see more of it in the future as I record more videos on this channel. Love everything about it. Tone, versatility, and of course aesthetics. It's not going to be going anywhere. If you're interested in giving one a try, I strongly encourage you to do so. You might find one on the used market like I did, or if you don't want to break the bank, you can try out one of their Excel or Premier models. Although if you tried a deluxe, I don't think you'd be disappointed either. Again, not a sponsored video, no affiliate links in the description. These are all my thoughts and opinions, though I wouldn't be opposed if D'Angelico reached out and sent me a Bob Weir Bedford, as I might be in the market for a solid body P90 guitar in the future. Just a thought, just thinking here. Using my noggin, putting it in the universe. If you haven't seen the Bedford, do some searching. That guitar is money. Or should I say, soldi. Okay, that's enough cultural appropriation for today. Thanks for sticking around to the end. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Share this video with others if you found it interesting or think somebody might find it cool. YouTube loves that thing, and the more you like and subscribe, the more they will share it to others. And one day this channel might get huge and achieve world domination. Do you have any experience with D'Angelico? Do you own any of the semi-hollows that I mentioned earlier by Gould, Hagstrom, or Ibanez? Gretsch, maybe? Feel free to leave a comment, share your thoughts. Love to hear about it. And I always love comments and reply because you deserve it. You do. So until next time, take care of yourself.